2015, I left the church, my wife and I left the church that we had been with for over 25 years. And we left that church in Newport Beach, California to move to southern China, where we based there in China, southern China, the city of Guangzhou. And we worked from China. We were not missionaries to China, but we lived in China because from China we had access to many other countries in the 1040 window, the 1040 region. And we were able from there to go to some of the poorest countries in the world. And when I left the church, I resigned the church and we moved over there, again, not knowing anybody. We didn't have any friends in Guangzhou. We didn't have any contacts in China. We had been missionaries in Hong Kong years earlier, so we had a lot of contacts in Hong Kong, but we didn't have anybody in the mainland. And so we moved over into the mainland and we based there. And we started this ministry called Barnabas 1040. Barnabas telling the what, 1040 telling the where. Barnabas is the man in the Bible that is helping. He's not out in the front. He's the helper in the Bible. And then 1040 refers to the 1040 region. And Pastor, you've talked about that, I assume, before here at the church a little bit. 1040 is a term. The 1040 window or the 1040 region is a term that was coined by a man by the name of Louis Bish in the 1970s, and Mr. Bish is actually Canadian, missiologist. He studies missions, and he was looking at a world map, and he realized that if you were to take a world map and draw a line from the 10 and the 40 degrees north latitude and draw that line across there, that's what he called the 1040 window. And that 1040 region begins over in North China, would make its way across Asia, across Central Asia, we would go through the Middle East, and of course China and India, and across those countries. There are 60-something countries in that part of the world, and 2 out of 3 people in the world live there. So it's the most densely populated part of the portion of the world. And so as we started this church, this ministry called 1040, Barnabas 1040, Barnabas is the helper, 1040 is where we want to be the helper. And so what we wanted to do was help to get churches planted in that part of the world. I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through tonight. But when I left the church at Liberty Baptist, where I'd been for 25 years in Newport Beach, I did it at the age of 65. So at 65 years old, I left the church and we moved to China. Well, the word got out that we were doing that. We turned the church over to a younger man. And in fact, Ryan Thompson was 36 years old. I was 65 when I left, and I recommended that the church call a man as their pastor was 36 years old. And he's, by the way, doing a wonderful job. Yeah. He's just doing a great job there, just a wonderful job. Couldn't be happier with what God's doing there at Liberty Baptist. But so we moved there, and so, the word got out, my friends called, and they asked me 3 questions. They said this, they said, Dwight, number 1, what are you doing? Number 2 question was, why are you doing it? And number 3 was, what do you need? Now, it wasn't exactly like that. It wasn't like they called and said, hey, Dwight, what are you doing? Well, why are you doing it? What do you need? And it was more like this. Hey, Dwight, what are you doing? We heard you're leaving the church. You're moving to China. And then when I told them what we were doing, it was like, why are you doing that? Why would you do that? And then when I told them why I do it, then it was finally kind of almost reluctantly, okay, what do you need? And so tonight, I want to take, just to explain this ministry, Pastor asked me to explain what our ministry is, those 3 questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What do you need? What we're doing is we're trying to get churches planted in that part of the world. Now again, that 1040 window, that rectangular area, Western Africa, the Middle East, Asia, approximately 10 and 40 degrees north latitude, 60-something countries there. 3/4 of the world's, or 2/3 of the world's population lives there. Now that area is often called the resistant belt. It includes the majority of the world's Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. There are 4 communist countries left in the world today, and 3 of them are in the 1040 region, 1040 window. It's a very difficult part for the gospel. The thing that draws us to that part of the world, and the reason we wanted to move that part of the world and have to get churches started there, was because not only is it the largest populated area of the world, but it is also the least evangelized portion of the world. Most of the countries in the 1040 region have less than 2% of their population that profess any kind of Christianity. Many of them are 1% or less, such as Thailand, I think, is under 1%. And now, when you think about this for a moment, think about, for example, what that means. Less than 2% profess any kind of Christianity. That would include Catholicism. That would include the cults. That would include Bible-believing Christians, evangelical Christians. It would include gospel-preaching churches. It would also include all the cults that would go into that Catholicism, all of it. Less than 2%. What would the population be that would profess to be a Christian of some sort in America? I don't know what it would be. I once read that 80% of people in America profess some kind of Christianity. 80, whatever, with Catholicism, whatever it might be. And I'm not sure what it is today. But whatever it is, it's not 2%. It's not 1%. It's a high percentage. Now think about this for a moment. Now I don't believe for a second that 3/4 of the people in America are saved. I don't believe that. I don't believe 50%. Maybe 50. But I would doubt very seriously that half of the people who live in America are truly born again. But let's say that it's 25 or 30% of people who live in our country have at one time or another received Christ as their Savior, truly been born again. Let's suppose it's 35 or 40%. Now, if the rapture takes place tonight, and it could, excuse me, Jesus could come at any moment. If Jesus comes tonight, would you agree that we're in trouble tomorrow morning in America? I mean, if tonight, in the middle of the night, 35 or 40% of the people who live here disappear, we got problems in America. But if the rapture comes tonight in the 1040 region, in that part of the world, it's business as usual. I mean, 1% of the people are gone. 99% of the people don't even know anything happened. It's an incredibly not only are those people unreached, they're unengaged. In other words, not only are they without Christ, but very few people are trying to reach them with the gospel. I'm going to give you some statistics, and I'm going to tell you where I got these statistics, because you, like me, may doubt these statistics, and I would be honest with you and say that I also question these statistics. I don't know if they're accurate or not, but here's where I got them. I got them from a book called Living Your Life on Purpose. The author of that book is a man by the name of Claude Hickman. It's a good book, very, very, very helpful book, Living Your Life on Purpose. Now, Claude Hickman studied missions, and he wrote some things about missions, and I want to give you the statistics that he gave in his book, Living Your Life on Purpose. He said this. Now, again, these are not from me. Whether they're accurate or not, I don't know. But I would doubt it. I would doubt they're accurate. But here's what he said. He said that he was talking about the number of people, the number of missionaries that are in different countries that are actually evangelical missionaries preaching the gospel. He said Iran has one missionary for every 3 million people. India has one missionary for every 2 million people. I've not been to Iran, but I've been to India. I doubt there's one for every 2 million people, but I think it's probably less than that. But he said, but what's the statistics from his book? Iran, one missionary for every 3 million people. India, one missionary for every 2 million people. Vietnam has one missionary for every 2 million people. I was just in Vietnam a few weeks ago. I doubt very seriously there's one for every 2 million people there. But those are from his books. Now, so not only are these people unreached, they're unengaged. Going on with statistics in Hickman's book. Now, again, how accurate are these? I don't know. But I want you to see what this man who studied missions and tried to figure it out, put it together in this book, Living Life on Purpose. Here's what he said. Notice the contrast. Mexico has one missionary for every 2,300 people. Peru has one missionary for every 240 people. Brazil has one missionary for every 276 people. Now, I don't know if they're accurate or not, and I'm not preaching against going to Mexico as a missionary. If God's called you to Mexico, go to Mexico. If God's called you to Brazil, go to Brazil, Peru. I'm for it. I've got friends in all those countries that are missionaries in those countries. Now, what I'm trying to show you is the imbalance here. I'm trying to show you that we've got an imbalance. We've got one for every 2 or 3 million people in certain countries. We got one for every 200 or 300 people in other countries. And so I'm simply saying that's why we're attracted to that part of the country, is because we want to see people going and people help to reach plant churches in the part of that area that has very few opportunities. Now, the issue is not being lost. People say, well, don't you think people are lost in these other countries too? Yeah, they're lost. They're lost in America. Whenever we went as missionaries to Hong Kong, my dad said to me, he said, son, we got a lot of unsaved people in America. I said, I know we do, Dad. But I know it. There's lost people everywhere. The issue is not being lost. The issue is that being lost and having no one searching for you. Yeah. Now, my friend, if you die and go to hell, you're in hell. It doesn't matter where you lived before you went to hell. Right. If you live in Orland, California, and you die and go to hell, you're still in hell. Yes. But at least if you live in Orland, California, somebody's looking for you, right? Yeah. Somebody's praying for you. Somebody wants to reach you with the gospel. Someone has said the only thing worse than being lost is to be lost with no one looking for you. Think about that for a moment. You're lost. You're lost. You're on your way to hell. And nobody's searching for you. Nobody's coming to your village. Nobody's coming to your house. Nobody's knocking on your door. Nobody's leaving a flyer at your door. Nobody's coming. You're going to be born. You're going to live your entire life. You're going to die. You're going to go to hell. And nobody's looking for you. There are millions of people in the 1040 window who will die without ever meeting a Christian. Now, we believe in our ministry the best hope for those people is a partnership designed to get the gospel message to them. With not just a foreign missionary, but their own people, reaching them with the gospel. It makes sense to me. It makes sense to us. Yeah. To me, at least, it does. That we will relate to someone who looks like us. They speak our language. They eat our food. They live like we live. They understand our culture. It just makes sense. That person is going to be, it's easier for that person to reach his own people than for me or for another foreigner. And I'm not against missionaries. We work through missionaries. We work with missionaries. We have 32 different missionaries, American missionaries or Filipino. We work in some places where there are no American missionaries. But we have Japanese missionaries, Independent Baptist Japanese or Filipino missionaries. And like in Bangladesh, for example. We don't have any American missionaries that I know of in Bangladesh at all. But we do have a Japanese missionary there. We have some Filipino missionaries there. I work through them. So I'm not against missionaries. But I'm simply saying that the best way to reach people is their own people reaching them. Right. So God has commanded the church to take the gospel. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to get the gospel, churches planted in that part of the world that has the least access to the gospel. So number one, what are you doing? Number two, they said, no, Dwight, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Why at 65 years old, 25, wouldn't that be nice? Why at 65 are you leaving America, moving to that part of the world, and trying to get this new ministry started? Why are you doing it? Well, let me give you three reasons. Number one, the Great Commission. Jesus said, go. God has commanded the church to take the good news to every nation. Somebody has said every saved person this side of heaven owes the gospel to every unsaved person this side of hell. Why are you doing it? It's the Great Commission. Jesus said, go. There are 5 commands in the Bible to go. There are none to stay. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts all say go. Yes, sir. But there are no commands where God said, look, I don't want you to go. I want you to stay where you are. Right. Now, does God want everybody to leave their home and go? No. But He wants some people to. God is surely calling some people to go to that part of the world where people are still waiting to hear the gospel. So 3 reasons. Number one, it's the Great Commission. Every church has the responsibility to get the gospel around the world. That's the Great Commission. Number 2, I believe that God has uniquely prepared my wife and I for this ministry. They said, Dwight, why are you doing it? I believe it's what I'm supposed to do. This is what God has called us to do, prepared us to do. Not only called us, prepared us. Look at Proverbs chapter 24, if you would, please. I've been a missionary. I've been a church planter. I've pastored. I believe that God, through these years, has been developing us, getting us ready for this ministry, where we're able to connect missionaries. I understand them both. I know what it's like to be a missionary. I understand their difficulties. I understand the raising support and all the rest of it. I understand the loneliness of being on the field and trying to figure out how to educate your children and all the rest of it. I get it. I understand the learning of a language, trying to learn Chinese or whatever language they're learning. I get it. I also understand pastors. I understand how pastors think and the fact that pastors want some accountability. We want to know we're investing the money in the right place. And we want to know, I get it. I understand. I understand pastors have limited budgets and that churches can't support every missionary. I understand that. I understand. I feel like God has prepared me where I can kind of bring these people together and we can get national pastors out on the field to reach their own people with the gospel. So I think this is what God's prepared us to do. I want you to look at Proverbs chapter 24. Here's a passage that's very convicting to me. In Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 11, God's going to paint a picture here. He says, if thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn into death, those that are ready to be slain. Now, let's stop right there. The picture here is somebody is drawn unto death. They're ready to be slain. The wordage means here that there's a group of people that are going to die. It's a done deal. They're going to die. It's been determined that they're going to die. They're drawn into death. They're ready to be slain. They've drawn, it's their time. They're going to die. So here's a group of people that are going to die. They're going to die. Now we go to the next verse. And God says this, verse 11, if thou forbear to deliver them. So here's a group of people that are going to die, and you could deliver them. They're going to die, but you could deliver them. If thou forbear to deliver them. So the word forbear means I choose not to do it, right? I forbear, I'm not going to do it. So I could deliver these people from death, but I choose not to. Now here's the question. Why would somebody choose not to? If there's somebody that's going to die, and you have the ability to save them, to keep them from dying, why would you say no? Why would you choose to forbear? Why would you do that? Whenever Gail and I were starting the Redwood Baptist Church in Redwood City, I'll come back to this in just a second. I'm going to tell you a story. One Saturday morning, I was outdoor knocking. When we started the church, we had just a little 9-month-old baby. By this time, the story I'm going to tell you, we had now, that little girl had grown up to be, she was about 4 years old, our oldest daughter, and we had a second daughter who was about 2 years old, maybe a little younger, about 3 and 1. 2 little girls. I was out knocking doors, out soul-winning on Saturday morning, and my wife was home with the babies, and so my neighbor happened to walk outside, and he saw something across the street at our house. What he saw was smoke coming up out of our chimney, and he saw flames coming out, embers coming out from the chimney. Gail was inside. She was burning some things in the fireplace. She had a fire going in the fireplace, and it was years ago. The requirements were not the same then as they are now. There was no grate at the top of the fireplace, of the chimney, and so the flames were coming, or the embers were coming out. The roof was beginning to catch on fire. My neighbor comes out, and he notices the smoke. He notices the flame. He notices the embers. He notices the flames starting to catch on the roof, and he realizes that this house is about to burn down. It's about to get bad. You know what he did? He ran across the street. He grabbed the door. He didn't knock. He opened the door. He ran inside the door and he started yelling, "Get out of the house!" He opens the door. He runs in and he says, "Hey, get out of the house! It's on fire!" Our oldest daughter Angie was right over here in the corner there, and she was coloring, sitting at the kitchen table, little dining room table. Gail was back in the back room where the family area was, and she hears this guy screaming. She runs out, and here's our neighbor. He ran over. He grabbed Angie up into his arms, and he said to my wife, "Your house is on fire. Is there anybody else in the house? Get them out of the house. Get them out now." Gail ran into the bedroom. She grabbed Janelle in her arms, the baby, and the four of them went running outside the house. They ran across the street to where his house was. He went into his house. No cell phones in those days. He went into his house. He got on the phone. He called the fire department. Fire department came out. Now, literally, my wife and children could have died in that fire that day. They could have died. I could be standing before you today talking to you about a family that I used to have that died back in the 1970s. But I'm not. Those girls grew up. They got married. They had children. They were joined by another sister. All grew up. All of them saved. All of them loved the Lord. All of them teaching the things of God to their children. They were saved that day because my neighbor saw it and did something about it. Now, here's the question I want to ask you, and God, we're going to see from this. Why would he not do something about it? I mean, what if he'd come out that door that morning, looked across the street, saw our house on fire, and said, huh, look at that, house on fire. Not my problem.
Yeah.
That's strange. You don't see that in this neighborhood. Huh. Well, we're back in the house. Saturday to see what's on cartoons on TV. What if you just walked away? And then when I came home, and I found, and by the way, when I got home, the fire department was there. But I mean, it was difficult. I had to stop, and walk down my street. They wouldn't even let me in the street to find what was going on at my house. What if I had come home, my wife and children had died that day, and then I found out my neighbor knew, and I said to him, "Hey, you knew? You saw it? Why didn't you do something about it?" That wasn't my problem. I didn't know they were going to die. I just lit the house on fire before. Not my problem. At my house. Why would somebody know someone's going to die and then say, "I'm not going to do anything about it. I think I'll forbear. I could help. I think I'll pass on this one." Let's look at the next verse. If thou forbear, verse 11. Those that are drawn into death, those that are ready to be slain. Why would they do that? If thou sayest, here's why. Behold, we knew it not. The excuse that they gave was, hey, we didn't know. We didn't know. So my friend said to me, "Dwight, why are you doing this?" Because I know. I know. I know that there are people that are just like us. People who hate, who love, who have all the emotions we have. People who want a better life for their children. People who feel things. People who have souls, who have minds. I know that there are people who are born, they live their entire lives, they die and they go to hell, and nobody ever tries to save them. I cannot stand before God and say, "God, you know what? I didn't know. I think I'll go play golf. We had a good run, 65 years old. We've started 3 churches. They're all going strong. Lord, I'm gonna go ahead and retire now." I can't do that. I can't stand before God and say, "I didn't know there were people who will die and go to hell who have never one time heard the gospel." I just come back from Indonesia, and I was preaching in Portland, Oregon, for Brother House. I don't know if Brother House or not. I don't know Brother House or not, but in Portland, Oregon. It was his missions conference. And I had flown from Indonesia back to the States here, and was just been down for a couple of days, probably still trying to get figured out with jet lag and all that. But I was in his missions conference, and it was a Monday or Tuesday night. I was sitting here on the platform, and he also had somebody there who was a home church planter. He was starting a church here in America, and I'm 100% for that. I'm 100% for church planting. We need more churches in America, absolutely. In fact, our policy at Liberty was, if you start a church in California, when I was pastoring there, if you start a church in California, we're going to support you. It's just that simple. We supported people that I never even met. We just found out they were starting independent Baptist churches somewhere in California. We started sending them money. We want to help you. We need more churches. I'm for it. So this man started, but at any rate, this man is telling his story. I just came back from Indonesia. He's presenting his ministry. I'm sitting right here. And he's there, and he's saying, "I'm going to a certain city, and I'm going to start a church." And he said, in this church, in this city, we already have 10 independent, fundamental, Bible-believing, KJV, 1611 Baptist churches. Went through all the things. He said, there are already 10 of them there. He said, mine will be the 11th, independent, fundamental, Bible-believing, KJV, 1611 Baptist church. He said, mine will be number 11. And then he said, you might say, well, wait a minute. If you already got 10 independent, fundamental, KJV, 1611 Bible-believing churches, why do we need another one? Baptist church, why do we need another one? And he said, wait a minute, do the math. He said, in our city, there are 1 million people in our city. By the way, we have 9 or 10 cities in all of America that have 1 million people. At the time, I had just come back from Indonesia, but I was living in Guangzhou, China, which has 14 million people. We've got hundreds of cities of well over 1 million people in China. And all over the 1040 window, hundreds of them. So Jakarta has over 10 million people. I'm sitting on the platform. He's talking, and he said, we have 10 independent fundamental Bible-believing KJV 1611 churches there in our city. And he said, if you were to do the math, let's suppose that here's the end of our city, and over there is the other end of our people, 1 million people in our city. And he said, and here's the first independent fundamental Bible-believing KJV 1611 Baptist church. And he said, and then you drive to the second one, you're going to pass 100,000 people before you see the second. He named it again, independent fundamental Bible-believing KJV 1611 Baptist church. Then he said, you go another 100,000 miles, you go 100,000 miles between each one. Folks, we need another one. I agree. We need another one. And by the way, he went to that city and he's doing a great job, bang-up job, wonderful job, one of the best churches in that town. But I was sitting here and I was thinking, you drive through 100,000 people before you see another independent fundamental Bible-believing KJV 1611 Baptist church. Yesterday, 2 days ago, I was in Jakarta, and you can drive in Indonesia, you can drive for days. You don't see a Methodist church, you don't see a Calvary chapel, you don't see a EV Free church, you don't see a Presbyterian church, you don't see an independent fundamental Bible-believing KJV 1611 Baptist church, you don't see a Southern Baptist church, you don't see any kind of church. Yeah. What you see is Muslim mosques after Muslim mosque after Muslim mosque. 5 times a day you hear the call to prayer coming through the loudspeakers. There are places where you're not going to see any kind of church. You'll see Hindu temples, you'll see Muslim mosques, but you're not going to see any kind of church building of any kind. Why are you doing this? Because there are people in this world that are still waiting to hear the gospel. And I really believe, why should anybody hear the gospel twice before everybody hears the gospel once? We need to do something about getting the gospel to those people. There's another thing. I really feel like that this is like the last lap of our ministry, of our life. As I was approaching the age of 65, I began to really consider, God, what do you want with the rest of my life? Now, I don't think you have to retire at 65. I think I could have continued to pastor Liberty Baptist Church at 65 years old. No problem. Church, it wasn't like people were saying, hey, you're going to be 65, what are you going to do? It was, I can do it. But I talked to my wife, I said, sweetheart, we can pastor this church at 65. I've got a lot of younger staff members. We've got, the church is still growing. Young couples are still coming. There's no reason to go. But someday we have to go. And I said to my wife, honey, how long can we stay? Can I stay till I'm 70? Yeah, I think so. Can I stay till I'm 75? I don't know, I'm 72 now. I think I could still pastor the church. 75? 80? Someday you got to go. Someday we have to turn this church over to a younger man and let him take it to the next level. You can't stay forever. And I said, sweetheart, why don't we do this now while we have the energy and the strength and the mind and the ability to get this ministry started? Why don't we do it while we can? I kind of felt like, you remember back in track, when you got that quarter-mile track back in high school, and you got to go 4 times around the track to get the mile in. And so I felt like, you know what, babe, we've been 3 times around the track. We got 1 more lap left. Now you look at me and you say, yeah, you've been 5 times around the track. Be nice, will you? We've been 3 times, at least she's been maybe twice around the track. But we've been 3 times around the track, babe. We got 1 more. We can stay here. Beautiful place, Southern California. Large church, plenty of money, staff members. It's a nice gig. We can stay here. Or we can go try this and see what God will do. And I just really believed it was what God wanted us to do. And so we did it. Did it totally by faith, not knowing what was going to happen. Today we support 110 different national pastors in 20 different countries. And we're adding 2 more in January, 2 more guys in India. They're up in the mountains of Nepal, up by Nepal and India, where we're adding 2 more national pastors. There's another reason we feel compelled to do this, and that is God's compassion. You're in Proverbs 24. Look at Proverbs chapter 21, if you would please. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 13. In Proverbs 21:13, the Bible says this. Proverbs 21, verse 13. Whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but shall not be heard. There are just passage after passage throughout the Scripture, Old and New Testament, where God talks about caring for the poor, those that are less fortunate. For 25 years, my wife and I lived just a few minutes from Disneyland. Disneyland is the magic kingdom. It's a wonderful place, but it's not real. In our real world today, in the world today, there are 2 kingdoms which are real. They're real kingdoms of real people. We have America. America is the magic kingdom. It's a wonderful place to live. Magic kingdom of America. Kids are encouraged to dream about what they might become and then go chase their dreams. We're told that if you get a good education, you work hard, you can accomplish anything. And that's true in our magic kingdom. Magic kingdom, kids can become whatever they want to become. They can choose their life and they can choose their profession and work hard and become whatever it is that God wants them to become. In the magic kingdom, people struggle with first world problems. In our kingdom, here in America, we struggle with first world problems. First world problems such as, where should we go for dinner tonight? What kind of food should we eat tonight? We struggle with first world problems like how to best decorate our homes. Should we do a remodel of our home, and how should we do it? How should we decorate? What motif should we choose? How would we struggle with first world problems in the magic kingdom, such as, where should we invest our excess money? Should we put it into a traditional IRA? Should we buy a Roth? Should we take the tax deduction now, or should we wait till later, get the tax deduction when we pull it out with our Roth? Should we use a financial advisor, or should we take care of our money ourselves? Should we put it in individual stocks? Should we do a 401k? Should we buy rental property? What should we do with our excess money? First world problems. What kind of a car should we drive? Should we drive an SUV, a crossover, a sedan? What kind of car should we drive? Now, by the way, I'm not being critical of any of these things. I love the magic kingdom. I'm not being critical of anything. I'm just telling you this is what we struggle with in our world, in our magic kingdom. Where should we go on vacation? Should we take a cruise? I'm not against cruises. We've been on cruises. Should we go to another country? I'm not against that. Maybe we should take a staycation and stay home and take the money we were going to spend on vacation and use it to remodel the guest bathroom or whatever it might be. It's just the stuff that we deal with in our country. What diet and workout regimen is most effective for us? These are first world problems we struggle with here in the magic kingdom. But outside the borders of our kingdom, outside the borders of the magic kingdom, is a much larger kingdom. Almost 5 billion people live in that kingdom. We call it the tragic kingdom. In the tragic kingdom, millions of people go to bed hungry each night. More than 1 billion of them are slowly starving to death as they're chronically short of food. In the tragic kingdom, most citizens have very little access to clean drinking water. 1 billion or more of them have no access at all. Instead, they walk miles each day to dip their buckets in dirty water filled with bacteria, bring it back and give it to their children. In the tragic kingdom, more than 1/3 of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. 75% live on less than $10 a day. I'm going to give you some statistics. Again, I'll tell you where I got them. I got them from MSN Money. According to MSN Money, if you make $15,000 a year, you're in the top 20% of the world's income earners. According to MSN Money, if you earn $25,000 or more a year, you're in the top 10% of the world's income earners. They said if you earn more than $50,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of the world's income earners. Liberals are constantly complaining about the 1%. We are the 1%. Right. In the tragic kingdom, Christians are beheaded. Little girls are taken as slaves and given to ISIS soldiers. In the tragic kingdom, People sell their little girls to men who tell them they're going to be taken somewhere to receive an education and learn a job, but they're not. The tragic kingdom. There are places, for example, in the Himalayan mountains between India and Nepal, there are entire villages in that part of the world where you can't find a girl. You can't find a girl over the age of 8. They've all been sold. They've been sold, and they've been told, their parents have been told they're going to take them down to Kathmandu, to the capital, and there they're going to get an education. They're going to learn they're going to learn a trade, and they're going to be able to have a better life than they have in those villages. But the reality is they're not going to Kathmandu. Somewhere along that journey from their village down to Kathmandu, they're going to be intercepted by traders from either India or Bangladesh, and they're going to be purchased again. And they'll be taken and sold into the sex slave industry. You say, I don't think you ought to talk about that in church. Can I say this to you? I don't think you ought to talk about it in church either. I don't think you ought to talk about it. I don't think I ought to be talking about this. I don't think it ought to be going on. Mm-hmm. But the fact that we don't talk about it is not going to make it disappear. It doesn't mean it's not happening. I think we need to get our eyes open and realize there's a whole world out there. And it's not like our kingdom.
Right.
You get out to the tragic kingdom, and I'm telling you, it's not the same as here. Why are you doing this? I've been there. I know that they're there. I've walked through their villages. I've seen them. I know they're there. The only hope that they have is that somebody's going to get the gospel to them. Let me ask you a question. I'm afraid that we've become so comfortable, we can't hear their cries anymore. We just don't talk to me about it. Don't tell me about it. I got a nice life here. I got my own problems. It's not my issue. It's not my problem. It's not me. It's not my family. Don't tell me about it. Let me ask you a question. Why has God blessed us so much in America? Could I answer that question? He always blesses us to be a blessing. Right. He doesn't bless us for us. Right. He blesses us so that he can use us to be a blessing to others. Yes. Why has God blessed you financially? You understand tonight that God will give to you what he wants to give through you. That's good. Yeah. He gives to us so he can give through us. Does God really want your standard of living to just keep increasing? When my wife and I first got married, we were dirt poor. We were just flat broke. I mean, we were broke. I'm not going to tell the stories because you were too as well, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Many of you were the same way. But what happened to us has happened to you. Little by little, God blessed you. And you got to the point where you could rent an apartment. And then you got to the place where you could rent a house. Then you bought your first house, and then you were able to buy another house, and then you were finally able to have 2 bathrooms instead of 1. And then you got a 3-bedroom house, and you maybe even got a garage. And little by little, God blessed you as time went by. At some point, we got to stop and ask ourselves the question, God, why are you blessing me? Is it really so my standard of living can increase? Maybe is it so your standard of giving can increase? Good. It's not just about, hey, I've got more, let's get a bigger house, get another, let's have 2 cars now. And I'm not against 2 cars. We don't have 2 cars, but we don't need 2 cars. We need them, we'd have them. We had them in Cal. We had them when I was pastoring here. I'm not against 2 cars. If I needed 3, I'd get 3. I live in the Magic Kingdom. You can do that. If you need 3, get 3. Now, you're in the Magic Kingdom, do it. If you need it. But at some point, we just got to stop and say, God, really? Is it just about me to get more and more and more and more? Or are you trying to give to me so you can give through me? So you can get that money to somebody else. That's good. Giving to missions, for example. Now, I'm afraid that we have just missed the point somewhere along the line. I want to wrap this thing up. The pastor asked me to talk to you about our ministry. That's what we do. We support national pastors in those countries. We moved over there so we can get into those countries, meet the missionaries, find out the guys that they've got that are ready to go out, raise the money to get them out to the field. So I'm going to wrap this up so we have some time for other things. But before I stop, though, I want to ask you something. And I want you to really think about this. In fact, I want to ask you 3 questions. And if you wonder who I'm talking to, I'm actually talking to you. I'm talking to you. Old, young, middle-aged, in between, single, married. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to every person in this room today, teenager, whoever you are. I want to ask you 3 questions. Very sincere questions I want to ask you. Number 1, I'm going to ask you this. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? One guy said to me after this message, he came up to me after the service and he said, Dwight, you know what I'm doing? I'm going to work every day. I'm coming home from work. I'm having dinner. I'm watching TV. I'm going to bed. I'm sleeping. I'm getting up the next day and I'm going and doing it again. And that's all I'm doing with my life. I'm going to work, I'm having dinner, I'm sleeping, and I'm going to work again. That's all my life is. And I said, my friend, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with going to work. It's good. You need to. Nothing wrong with coming home and having dinner, watching some TV, getting some sleep, and being faithful. There's nothing wrong with that. But you got to figure out, why are you doing that? What does God want you to do? Does he want you to be his witness and his missionary there at work? Does he want you to use that money, some of the money that you get, to tithe, and above that to give to missions and help get the gospel? What does God want you to do? So I asked you, what are you doing? Number 2, why are you doing it? Whatever it is you're doing, why are you doing it? Do you have a purpose in this thing? Do you understand that God has a purpose for your life? There's a purpose for you in your classroom, yes, in your job. There's a purpose for you. Number 3, what do you need? What do you need for God to do in your life to say to you, I want to use you. And for you to say to him, I want you to use me. What are you doing? What do you need? Why are you doing it? What do you need? What would God have to do to make you say, I want my life to count for Christ? And I want to help take the gospel around the world. The last question, though, that those pastors asked me was, what do you need? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What do you need? And I'm going to tell you what I need. Here's what I need. I need 2 things. I need for your church to be solid, connected, loving, together. I need you to be behind your pastor. I need you to be behind your program. I need you to be dedicated to this local church, not getting upset about silly things, not getting mad about the color of the chairs or the paint on the wall or the next building program, or just, I need you to stay united, keep tithing, keep giving. And there's a second thing I need. I need your dimes. You say, you mean you need our dollars? No, I don't. I need your dimes. Other missionaries need your dollars. And by the way, they're worthy of it. They're worthy of it. There's no problem with that. I just don't happen to need it. Because see, the guys that we support, we can put a guy full-time on the field for anywhere from $100 to $400 a month. They don't need $1,000. They don't need $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. Now I would if I was a missionary when I lived in China. My wife and I lived in China. I'm not saying that there's something better about us. We lived on we spent $3,000 a month. That was our budget to live there for us to live in China. So if I was your missionary going to China, I would say I need your dollars. But I'm not. We're not supporting me through my ministry. We're supporting those national pastors. $100 a month, we put them out in the fields. $200, $400, whatever it is that they need in the particular area where they are. So that's what I do. And then again, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What do you need?